what also is interesting to see is more than just players, but the entire nation of Belgium appears to also be not standing for it.
Yeah, so this is week 3 of Battlefront fucking it up for everybody.
Belgium denounces loot boxes as gambling. Hawaiian legislator calls them predatory.
The Hawaiian rep, or whoever the fuck it is, the guy wearing a suit, the elected representative, calls Battlefront 2 an online casino for your children. A Star Wars online casino for your children.
Star Wars themed.
Those are the words that are going to get right to the angry parents.
Oh, yeah. And they're like, don't let people buy this. And what's more telling, particularly for the U.S., in which they describe, we are talking to people in many states about upcoming legislation about this stuff. So it's well,
Disney got on the phone with EA
and was like, fucking quit.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you associating Star Wars with gambling? Yeah.
Well, because
which is funny because they're Star Wars gamble.
Sure.
Yeah.
Belgium's Gaming Commission has ruled that loot boxes, in-game purchases where you receive randomized are gambling. The country's ministers of justice want to see them banned Europe-wide.
So Europe's weird, and I'm not super sure how that legally works. But as far as I can tell, the European courts go all the way up to through your nation to your European Supreme Court, which decides things legally for the Europe.
Well, let me combo break this story while I'm reading the story.
Okay.
Because even newer, because that was 5 days ago. But as of yesterday, the UK Gambling Commission determines loot boxes are not gambling under British law.
Well,
so now the EU is at odds based on these two countries' stances.
The UK's leaving, remember?
Oh, well, okay,
they're on their way out.
Either way, the UK is like, nah, loot boxes are fine, but Belgium's like, fuck those things.
I'm interested to see.
So this is already playing out in a completely interesting way.
Now Australia's fully on board with the fucking gambling shit as well. And I think that I saw a quote by somebody going, this is obviously gambling.
Now, here's the problem.
From somebody in a position of power.
Now, here's the problem, though, right, is when you have, like, major markets that are at odds with these types of things, you just get the Australia situation where the company would rather keep their shit in and not release it in those territories than remove it and release it in all.
Right. Which stops working once enough territories kick in.
Go the opposite way on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if Belgium can push it all the way up to Europe, and it's Europe and Australia, that's a lot. Even though Europe's game industry is not, say, North America's or Japan's.
Certainly not.
It's still like a third of the English-speaking, like, population for games.
You're gonna have to weigh.
It's big.
You're gonna have to weigh your money versus the amount of sales you make in those countries.
And then, like, think of how like gaming communities react to stuff like Destiny 2's XP shit and Battlefront stuff. Imagine if they're like, here's the American version of the game with all the gambling shit still in it.
Oh man,
People
that
are
would be
go
interesting.
Crazy.
Like if they release 2 versions. Yeah.
Well, because that's what Blizzard does.
Yeah.
It's China and everybody else.
It's true.
So they can hide the loot box percentages.
Right. Or you put it all into like a separate piece of DLC.
Yeah.
And then you make
Here's the
that piece of
gambling
DLC
DLC pack
unavailable in those countries.
Yeah.
That's the other way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Cut off your nose to
like
spite your face.
The disc is free of that crap.
Cut off your face and leave
So it's
your
like,
nose.
don't download patch XXY2 because it adds the FOB system into MGS5.
Basically, yeah.
But only in the US and parts of Europe.
Okay, here. So let's
what a fucking mess.
Let's go through it. So in Belgium, they decided last week to look into the issue.
Fucking mess.
And they came to their decision. The ESRB rejected calls to classify loot boxes as gambling.
Fuck off, ESRB. You are literally the organization that is supposed to classify it as gambling.
So they've already made their stance. So the ESRB's real gambling or simulated gambling labels are not going to appear on games that have loot boxes. After ESRB, then Peggy stepped in, took a weaker stance.
That's the European ESRB.
Yeah, Pan-European Gaming Information
Peggy.
Ratings. Yeah, Peggy 18.
It's the only reason I know.
Telling
Peggy.
WCCF Tech that only national gambling commissions could decree whether or not something constitutes gambling. So Peggy's like, we're not even getting involved.
And
it's a national issue.
I believe
and we're
Peggy's
pan-European.
stance actually includes works for everybody. Like the United States Gambling Commission and the Canadian Gambling Commission, the Mexican, everybody, right? Those are the ones, because ESRB is the one saying we're not going to put the label on it, right? But whether or not it's legally classified as gambling is not up to the ESRB. It's up to whatever government agency handles that in whatever country you're having to be, right? So the ESRB might not put the label on it, but then if the Gambling Commission comes down and goes, this is fucking gambling, then you best be sure that the ESRB is going to put the label on it so those games can still be sold.
So every organization is actually kind of like clashing on who has the power.
They're all passing the buck unless it's the ones that are actually up there, and those are split or undecided currently.
Yeah, and who's willing to not be friends with EA and Activision?
So here's the deal, right? Here's what I actually see occurring.
And hold on, there's conflicting reports about and translations about what precisely the Gaming Commission has decided. As for per 4gamers.be, Gaines has made his views clear, but contrary to this news report, the Commission itself is still investigating. Okay, we'll go on.
So here's what I see occurring.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a situation very similar to the YouTube fair use thing.
Yeah.
And it's like nobody wants it to go to court because everybody's much happier with the gray area that we all live in, right? EA and Activision and all those companies don't want to risk
the government getting involved.
Government getting involved.
That's why the ESRB exists.
It is much better in their interests to back it the fuck off
then let it escalate
for quite some time.
Absolutely.
So that this shit goes away.
Absolutely.
Until the heat's off.
Yeah. Because the moment you get to that federal level,
because the dice roll could go in their favor and that would be great, but the dice roll could outlaw it forever.
The moment you get to that federal level, you are completely impacting the future of your industry for the foreseeable future.
And I mean, say EA rolls the dice and fucks it up. Their other competitors in the industry are gonna want to do everything they can to see that company just die as a result of stealing trillions of future dollars.
Trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Because those kinds of legal decisions are essentially forever.
Okay. So
11 trillion.
The UK
I mean, in the U.S., you still
article-
can't have gambling on land in a lot of states.
Yeah.
Got to be on a boat.
Here in Montreal, if you have gambling machines in your bar, they can only be there if they've been sitting there for years now as a grandfather situation.
I think you have to build your bar
around it. Yeah.
You can't make a bar and install a new video poker machine.
No, but if it was already sitting there when you built the bar,
if there was an empty lot, but there were
that's
some
fine.
lottery machines, some gambling machines, then
Those video poker machines are poisonous, man. They are the worst.
Yeah,
And
gotcha is the worst.
there have been like attempts on lives to purchase buildings where those video poker machines are still standing.
Yeah.
Straight up. So the commission said
we just have a casino in the city. Just go to the casino.
The UK Commission said, while the line between video gaming and gambling is becoming increasingly blurred, its job is to step in when the practice meets the definition of gambling under the UK law. Belgium recently pushed to permanently ban loot boxes and established its own gaming commission. Yeah, okay. So basically the UK, even though they back down, they're saying that like it's still not a great situation.
They back down and they're like, we're going to pass this down to the gambling guys and they'll tell us what's what, and we'll get back to you. They passed the buck to the gambling commission, which is honestly.
You think in Quebec it'd be up to the Régie d'Alcool, right? The same.
No,
people
it'd be under the Quebec Gambling Commission.
Well, they handle the lotto stuff here too.
Yeah. Well, hey, guess what? This shit under Quebec law specifically is almost assuredly gambling.
Oh, it's gone. That's what I'm saying.
We live in a place in which this is likely to be gone first.
Yeah.
Because you can't. Hey, if you're in the States particularly, you see a lot of fucking sweepstakes and lottos and shit. You know, you go to a coffee shop and it goes, and at the back it'll say valid in the U.S. and Canada.
Yeah.
Except Quebec. Because Quebec has really, really strict lottery, sweepstakes, and gambling laws. And in fact, you have to pass the skill testing question.
We are the reason for the skill testing question.
So the skill testing question is, if you win the lottery in Quebec, and in some parts of Canada, I think, but it's mostly Quebec.
I think mostly.
You win the lottery, they give you a simple math question. Now, it's really simple. It's like 2 times 3 plus 5 or something.
It's to make sure you're not a robot.
But if you don't answer, because you cannot... Skill has to be a portion of
it
winning.
cannot be random chance. Otherwise,
and if
it's
you
completely
fail that
here.
simple math question, that money is gone.
You don't win the money.
So you better be fucking sure you
Be on point that
right?
day.
So loot boxes don't have skill testing questions. They are skillless by default.
Yeah.
Unless they decide to have like a huge sweepstakes here where they say now juggle for a minute. and then they increase it from 4 items to 5.
Put everything in this one bag, but we don't want the bag to be heavy.
That's the skill. That's how you win the prize. We have Quebec's crazy like that.
Whenever I saw a contest that would say there's a skill testing question, I always get real nervous and I wouldn't even enter.
The cereal box one.
Yeah. Usually I'll be like, no, man, I can't. Too much pressure.
I would read it, and I remember I'd read it like 5 or 6 times just to make sure.
It's pretty interesting that we're basically living in the petri dish of this current argument, because what's going to happen? Because I know the government here has done it before, in which they go, okay, from this date, this thing will no longer be available here.
Games
they did,
without English booklets were not available here for a minute.
Yeah, for like a minute.
Quebec doesn't care.
And there's always this point where it's like, okay, from now on, this is the way it is, right? And so with the packaging stuff, they made the bilingual packaging, and then it's fine, right? But there's that month or two where it's too late to change the games that are on their way. Mm-hmm. And that game, there is going to be a period of like a month or 2 months or 3 months in which games like this will just not be available to be sold here. Mm-hmm. And I'm really interested in seeing what ones those are going to be.
I'm really interested in seeing if they're going to try to stop it on a digital level.
I don't think you can.
A lot of work.
Because that's why I'm not as worried as I was back in the day when Ninja Gaiden Remake Original was coming out. That was one of the first booklet issue games because
really?
Yep, the Ninja Gaiden original release was
like the Xbox.
Xbox original. Not shipping. It didn't ship with a French booklet, and it got held up at the game store that we used to have downtown. I remember. Yeah. And then for a while it was like, are we going to get it here or not? And they're saying we might have to just import American copies, but that means we're selling them at a markup. And we all panicked. And I remember that.
So I remember, like, Steam and PlayStation Store and all that shit, they ask you for your address for tax purposes, right?
Yeah.
So you could change that, but I mean, Steam, it's really easy to get around the IP lock. And PlayStation Network doesn't currently charge tax, so it doesn't actually matter what fucking location you put your PayPal as.
There's ways around it.
And if that way is so simple as just buying an Ontarian copy from Ottawa,